part 3 of our series titled Fixing Us, and we are really pumped about today. I don't see any youngins in the room. I did give a disclaimer last week that this will be a message. It's a little bit of a different talk, but to be quite honest, this is a talk that I believe it doesn't matter what age they are. They need to be in here, because that's the problem with the church now. Just saying it, being truthful. So today's message is AKA Holy Sex, Batman. So we're talking about sex right now. We're going to get into this. Some of you think I'm going to get really perverted. I'm not that guy. I know a lot of people, they think that I cross over the boundaries sometimes, or some people get all nervous, like, oh God, where's he going? And my wife has talked to me many times. Some of you like to warn my wife between services, just let you know, Josh, I'm going to say this in a nice, polite way. It's none of your beeswax. Don't be going to my wife and being like, oh, Pastor Josh, he's going to say this. Listen, my wife knows. And if my wife doesn't know, she'll beat me up when I get home. Let her beat me up. It's all good. That's called love. But listen, guys, I cross the boundaries a lot of times because I don't think we cross it enough. We don't in church. So to give you guys just a little bit of a bio from me, just to understand it, I grew up in a two-parent home, and I had an older brother. I grew up in the woods of West Virginia, so I had imaginary friends, Gene and Ralph. And Ralph was a dog. They were from outer space. Long story. They still visit me sometimes. maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, so I grew up in West Virginia. I grew up in not a farm. I didn't have animals. I had some goats and turkeys and little stupid things like that, but that's not really a farm. Anyways, I know it's embarrassing. Those are like embarrassing farm animals. So I grew up there. I grew up kind of sheltered in a roundabout way. Grew up in a great church, but even in the church itself, they really didn't have a youth group per se to teach really great, firm, foundational things. I went to summer camp every year, where at summer camp, they basically made us sign our life away to a covenant of abstinence. But they basically just said, sex, don't do it. And then you signed and I remember I brought it home and my mom framed it and put it on the wall. That was awkward. Hey, Mama, can I have my girlfriend come over tonight? Yeah. Angela comes over, and we're like hanging out in my room, just talking. She's like, what's this? Abstinence, no sex. Not that it was wrong, but it was awkward. It was just an awkward conversation because I was only in the 8th grade. So it's not like, but today we need to talk about it a little bit more, but and earlier stages for sure. But it was awkward, So that was kind of my brought up. And then I was in public school all the way up through middle school, and then high school I was in Christian school. My mom was a teacher at the Christian school, so therefore we got to go for free. So that's why I went to Christian school. So I learned a lot in Christian school. I believe that's one of the reasons why I feel, and I don't mean to say this in a prideful way, I am very humble, obviously, but that's kind of an oxymoron, I guess, when I have to tell you I'm humble. But I believe I'm very well-rounded in the gospel of doctrines and the gospel of non-denominationals and, all those kind of things. So I get it. So there's my spiel. So understand where I'm coming from as I start preaching this out, all right? Everyone in this room has to agree there's a right way to do things. Because we know this because of James chapter 1, verse 17, that all good things come from above. So by knowing that scripture, that kind of gives us this rule of thumb. Do you guys remember in geometry, was it postulates and theorems? Is that what it was? Postulates and theorems. So it was like these things. I have to go to my mathematician boy over here, Milk. Postulates. The reason why I got a C in geometry. But those were kind of like those phrases that it's this, and this, and so therefore it has to be this. It's the whole A plus B equals C and all those kind of things, okay? So with these in my head, I go back to the scriptures and I go, this is absolute. When you see this James chapter 1, verse 17, that all good gifts come from above, then that means there's a right way to do things. There is a right way. There is clearly a black and white issue here. There's not any gray. There's not a fence. It's black or white, period. Okay? So When you think about the right way of doing things, you think about, and we're talking about sex this morning, we're talking about marriage. There's got to be a right way to do this. And there's been a lot of issues that have taken place that, man, it just, for some reason, we get it on these crazy tantrums, and it gets us down lost paths and roads where we're just arguing on the sake of arguing, but not really knowing what God has to say about it. We're just going off what someone taught us. And even this morning, I encourage you, after I go through these scriptures and different things, I encourage you guys to go back. That's the reason why I always say to you guys, I hope you become good Bereans. And those are people in the book of Acts that would go back after the disciples would actually teach them. They'd go back and look and confirm what these disciples were teaching. And that's good. That's what we should be doing for sure. But when I look at all of this and I think about the culture of today, it's funny when you hear certain Christians, they'll go, oh, it's so bad. Sex is so bad. Actually, it's no different back in the Greek and Roman days. No difference whatsoever. Actually, there's nothing new underneath the sun. All these things that are happening today were happening back then. The difference is the amplification that's happening in our culture due to our social media and communication venues. Guys, there's so many ways. I could call someone right now in China. Marco Polo would go berserk over that. I mean, think about this. Like, we have the ability just to call anyone right now and be like, hey, what's up? That's in conference. We can do a video call, not just phone. We can make a video out of this. Matter of fact, our missionaries to Ireland, Gary and Beth, they were like, hey, we want to talk to the church via Skype or via whatever, FaceTime, to the whole congregation. You think we can make that happen? And I was like, yeah, well, let's try this out. So we're looking to pipe them in here in a couple weeks from them over in Ireland. That's crazy. But imagine now, and that's why like Snapchat, we're talking Snapchat, like boob chat's what we call it, really. Because that's what these kids everything out there can be perverted. Everything can be changed. So there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way. And they're actually trying to make Snapchat a right way of doing communication. They really, truly are. Now, whether it was started that way, I don't know. I wasn't the inventors. But boy, I wish I was. $6 billion. What in the world? But today, there's really nothing new. So we got to stop looking at the idea of like, oh, there's so many weird things going on and it's just nuts. It's not nuts at all. God actually instructs us in the very beginning with one of the greatest scriptures for marriage that you can possibly read. So get your Bibles, go to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2, verse 21. So, as you're turning there, just get it prepared. But we're going to see and read that God created sex for a husband and a wife. Okay? We're going to see that we have to explain, and for generations to come, the good intentions to what sex is all about, the intimacy and the romance behind it. It's our job to do this, okay? Sadly enough, we haven't done a great job of passing that on to our children. And so now it's very, very, very important that we seize this moment and define the biblical narrative to what marriage is all about. And that sex is God's idea. There was a culture of Christendom that went through that basically was that sex was only for birthing. Like that was it. Otherwise, don't have sex. No romance involved. That was all that was for. There was a teaching about this, that sex was dirty. So what happened was it shifted a lot of the thought to think, well, sex is of the devil. The only thing that is good from God is procreating. That was it. That was the only thing. So there was this paradigm shift that was horrible. And it went rampant through the churches. I have had counseling sessions where girls will have a hard time having sex when they first get married because they have been drilled in their head for years and years that sex is bad. Don't have sex, because that's the only thing that the parents, that's easy to teach. Don't have sex. Don't have sex. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't have sex. But there's not a a real love behind the reason of why I don't have sex. So these women, when they get married, they have a hard time. They have a hard time breaking that cycle of thought to be intimate with their husbands. Now, I've heard the same thing. It's a rare occasion with the men, not to make a joke out of it, but it's a rare occasion with the men, because that's what men want a lot of times. But it's there, okay? It does happen back and forth. But we, as a church, really need to dive into this. It's sad that we don't. You don't ever, I have never, I swear I've never, take that back, one couple in my entire life of ministry, okay, which I'm going on 12 years now, okay, and one couple has ever talked to me about needing sex help, okay? So anytime people ever come to me, they want to know what the Bible has to say about depression. They want to know what the Bible has to say about drugs, all of those. That's the main concern. But it's never about sex. And that's sad because sex is actually a representation of a blood covenant. That's what makes sex so amazing on your honeymoon, your first night together, because it is a blood covenant. It's everything about it. You're breaking blood. And so therefore there's that intimacy of saying, you are mine, and I'm yours, and this is it. This is us forever. This is amazing. It's great. So that's what, it's just sad that we have neglected this because of, unfortunately, of lack of knowledge, which we get told that time and time again in the Old Testament that my people will perish because due to lack of knowledge. But our sex life suffers because, well, we just think that, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with it. I just don't want to mess with it. It's easier to get maybe our problems, but what if we had all healthy sex lives in this church? And we should. The sad thing is some of you are actually still cringing right now with me saying sex so much. You are. I know it. Because we have neglected to talk about it in church. It's like this whole, don't do it. It's too much. But guys, we have to understand that God put boundaries on sex. There is boundaries on sex because sex without boundaries is harmful both to individuals and to families. There's a lot of things we need to start teaching and instructing. We need to start learning. We need to cultivate this, to love one another and to talk about it and openly. Isn't it weird that if you do talk to your spouse about it, one or the other kind of quiet, they get real quiet about it? We get real quiet about it. One wants it really wild, one doesn't want it really wild. And one wants to talk about the wild side of it, and it's awkward, and you get real embarrassed, you get red-faced. Why would you get red-faced with someone you made a blood covenant with? It's weird. And it's due to the fact that the culture of church has completely rejected this teaching and has taken side little steps to say it's only good for procreating. It's only good for creating children. That's it. Let's just not touch it anymore. But God created sex for husband and wife. And let me say something. We have done a tremendous, extremely, I don't know what other adjectives I can use, but I'm just trying to drill this home. We have done the worst job with this topic than any other topic in church. Because we've gone to the public schools, we've told the public schools, I don't like you preaching to my children about sex ed, but yet didn't give an alternative. The church has not gone to the public school system and said, hey, we got an alternative program that we've worked out of sex education that works, and then we can why don't we give them an option? Let the parents give an option. I get it, freedom of speech and freedom of separate, government from, church, state, all that kind of stuff. I get that stuff. But what I'm trying to say is, yeah, obviously all I want in the public, don't twist my words or I'll punch you in the face. know, like I'm really kind of offended by just a punch in the face. Really, by anything. Obviously, I don't want the teaching of what the public school system's doing as far as sex ed. Okay, that's a given, duh. I'm a man of the cloth, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that we haven't given them an alternative. We haven't given them an alternate type of teaching. That's what's sad. So if we are going to go into the school systems, at least let's give them an alternate teaching. Let's give them something to say, hey, because if you go to any doctor, they're all going to tell you the safest sex, abstinence. That's the safest of sex. I've gone to some doctors where you can know they're Christians, and they'll be like, abstinence. And I've gone to other doctors, and they look at you and go, you know, they always, the easiest way is really just abstinence. But, when they roll their eyes, I'm like, no, you don't roll your eyes. You just say abstinence. But the problem is that we've presented this culture of sex. We have twisted it so greatly. I went to Christian school. Okay, I went to Christian school, and this is true stuff and real stories, guys. And I know many of you in this room. I can throw out a statistic, and I guarantee it's over 50% of you in this room has had the same experience as I have if you grew up in a Christian home. Okay. And not to neglect my parents. My dad tried to teach me sex in the 6th grade. That was weird, that moment you're sitting there and you're reading these books and my dad's saying all these words. But there was more to it. My dad and my parents did fail. I love you, Mom and Dad, but you guys did fail on the influence side besides that one awkward hour when I was in the 6th grade in my room. There needed to be more cultivating, more conversations, more of it, more often. Okay? But I went to Christian school and then through high school, and we didn't have sex ed. Matter of fact, the health teacher, she got fired from our Christian school because she talked a little too much in detail of a particular topic to a female audience only. She got fired because parents were like, no, can't talk about this stuff. I don't remember what it was, the exact topic, but parents went on an uproar and she got fired. And I am sorry, you were a great teacher. All because we are fearful of sex. So I graduated high school. I went back to the high school after my freshman year of college, and I said, you guys need to talk about sex. And my principal and a couple of those guys were like, what do you mean? I go, you need to talk about sex. You need to, because I'm an idiot. Because I know nothing. I am completely, I feel embarrassed. I feel like I could get a disease by just touching someone. You guys need to talk about it. Oh, man, it ain't gonna happen. Wow. So my freshman year of college, so my roommates beside me, or underneath me, okay, in the bunk beds. And there's this medicine on this thing, and it's for his STD. And so I'm gonna have an awkward conversation with him. Hey, dude, what's your STD? I only knew this guy for a couple months in, too, so that was a little weird. Hey, dude, what's your STD? Like, can I get it? I didn't know. Even after he told me what the crazy word was, I didn't know what it was. And back then, I didn't have Google. Thank God, because I didn't want to see images of any of that stuff. But back then, I had dial-up. It's like... So it was miserable for me. So I'm sitting there creeped out above him in my bunk bed, kind of going, right? And if you want me to get even more graphic, which that's what I do, there'd be those moments where I knew I wasn't supposed to go back into that dorm room because there was something hanging on the door because that was his rule. And I was like, oh, this is awkward. But when I'd come back, I'd think, what's been touched? Hey, I'm talking real life. And if you're sitting here and you think that that's not real, wake up, church. Wake up, man. It's because I'm walking in this dorm room going, what? So I'm sitting in the hall throughout my freshman year, and we had a couple guys on the hall. I went to a smaller college, so only a few people were on the hallways. So we were all sitting out there one late night. And so we had this guy who had insomniac issues. And so he was in his dorm room, and all of a sudden, Bahama Mama came. That was her name. I don't know why. So Bahama Mama came through the hallways, and my dorm room, we didn't have like We didn't have, it was co-ed 24/7. Like you could come and go as you please. No one was at the door like checking anybody. I went to a great college. So Bahama Mama comes on the scene, and she goes into this guy's room, and we're like, because we know the stories that goes with Bahama Mama. And so all of us were like, oh my gosh. So like a little while later, she comes out, and that guy comes out and is like, and I'm like, dude, you got to get checked. He's like, what do you mean? It's like, Bahama Mama, bad. Bahama Mama's bad. So before you know it, he's like going the next day down to the health department. Guys, I can tell you 100 more stories. I don't need to, obviously. But guys, that's what's going on, and I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't told otherwise. So then when I got into a culture where sex was accepted and that it was the thing to do, before you know it, I found myself in that same circumstance. And I found myself scared and freaked out because I didn't know what was right. I didn't know what was the good thing and what was bad. I couldn't distinguish between the two because no one had taught me otherwise. Now, I know some of you are like, well, you're just trying to blame your past and your parents and put all the guilt on them. And they were so... No, it's my fault. I knew better. I did know better. But I got caught up in those moments. But I will say it's going to help in those moments if I have trigger phrases and words, moments that click back in my head and I remember that moment. I'm not supposed to do this. I've got to refrain from this. I got to restrain myself. I have to stop and step back and say, whoa, too much, too far, too soon. And that's sad. So in Genesis chapter 2, verse 21, we have the story of the beginning, which is the way that God created it. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to read the scriptures. But the way I like to read it, which makes it just awesome, is at that moment when he wakes up and he sees this woman, he jumps up into like song and dance. Some of you are kind of like, no, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. He stands up, he's like, whoa, like a Ric Flair moment, you know, it's like, whoa, and he's like, this is now bone of my bones, you know, he's like, what? He's like, flesh of my flesh, she shall be mine. It's like, you know that's how it was, because that's how men are. Men are over the top. Men aren't normal, and we like to show off. Do you imagine those show-off moments for her? Like, so awkward, like, ugh, creepy, you know? You know he did it. You know it. But guys, here he breaks out, and he's like, man, this is awesome. We're going to call her woman. This is great. It's going to be amazing. And this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Guys, if you read in this, you can take out all kinds of stuff. This gets a little touchy and offensive to some, and this is ridiculous that it does, because I'm reading the gospel. I'm reading the Bible. I'm reading this. It's real. It's true. It's for today. But you see the husband and wife were a part of this. There was no bestiality involved, no homosexuality involved, no infidelity involved. When you read this to the purest of its form, it says simply that man and woman were made for each other and that they felt no shame. That bed can't be defiled. Like when you guys are together, your husband and wife, man, you guys, everything is awesome. And that's the way it should be. Why is it so awkward? You know, like why have we made it so weird? It's because we don't know how to approach this term titled sex. We don't. Because some of our learned behavior has creeped in and it has just twisted it all. And that's what we've got to get back to, the purest of forms of what this is about. We have to. We have to. We have to. We have to. Rather than just constantly saying this world's going to hell in a handbasket and look at all of this sex and all these teenagers, they're so bad, they're so hard. They're so hard because when they were young, no one was teaching them what sex was really about. No one was. So this is the easiest perversion because we have idolized sex. We have placed it on a pedestal and we have worshiped it. And we have really worshiped it here, at least. And I don't need to talk about Canada or Mexico. Talk about America. That's where we live. So stop trying to be like all about these other countries. Let's talk about America right now. It's so rampant. There's a lot of stories I want to tell you guys, but I know it's pushing the edge and the limit. But I kind of toss back and forth if I really wanted to tell you guys this story, but man, it's one of these stories. It's like the mustard story I told you guys a few weeks ago, but it's with sex and it will make you sick. That's what I thought. But I have never, ever in my entire wildest imaginations thought that this would happen. And it's happening. It's happened before, but it hit home for me because it dealt with some old youth that I had. But they found themselves in a line of kids having a group orgy together while waiting for band practice. And people were taking photos of all of this, video of all of this. And these aren't just seniors in high school. These are freshmen in high school. And that's taking place in our school systems today. That blows my mind. When I was in the ninth grade, I was embarrassed to take off my shirt in front of other people. You know, that was normal actually for all of us. I remember fighting over who was going to be shirts and skins on the ball court. I was like, shirts, man, shirts. I'm a shirt. I'm a shirt. Shirt. We'd be yelling shirt because no one had abs back then. Like no one. Guys, but in today's culture, we've worshiped this sex god, the sex idol, and it's been twisted so greatly that then the church just kind of looks at it as like, don't do it. And then we tell them, there's just a lot of sexual diseases and lots of consequences that go with it, so just don't do it. But that still is telling you there's odds. There's odds. Odds you won't get pregnant. Odds you won't get an STD, so it's worth taking the risk. That's why we still play the lottery, a lot of us Christians, because we think we can all get rich. No, if some of you are like, get off the financial, go back to the sex. We'll go to the sex. Don't talk about finance. Just let you guys know, it's the truth. In our head, that's how we tinker with this thought. There's an odds to winning. There's an odds to making this happen. So that's what happens with sex as well. It's like, well, STDs, I may not get it. It's worth the risk. I may not get her pregnant, or I may not get pregnant. It's worth the risk. And then we play that card, and we try to run with it. I'll let you guys know, I had sex before marriage. Unfortunately, I wish to this day that I had not. My wife did not have sex before marriage, and it still haunts me because there was a piece of me that is missing for my wife. And I hate that. It's gone. There's that piece. Now God has come back and restored me, and He has brought me freedom. But there's that bit inside of me that I just go, bleh. Like, why? Why did I do this? Why did I allow this to happen? It's sad. So we have worshiped sex. We have taken it out of context. We have perverted it to a degree where in church we don't want to talk about it anymore. So I want to throw out this with you guys. We have now, and it's ridiculous, just in the last 150 years has it gotten to this point. But now we've resulted into such a vast majority of pleasuring ourselves without God. Now, there's always been that. Like I told you, there's nothing new underneath the sun, but now there's access to all these pornographic materials that would cause us to say it would be easier, because you guys know what porn stands for. Some of you have no idea what porn stands for. Some of you are like, oh, that's not really what it stands for. This is true. Pleasurable orgasms right now. Porn. That's what it is. It's an orgasm right now on the spot. Fix that need. Don't have to worry about having the opposite sex with you. Just fix that need and get done with it. So, porn revenues are more than $90 billion a year. 90% of children between the ages of 8 and 16 have viewed porn on the internet. Porn accounts for 12% of all internet sites. The largest consumer category of internet porn is boys aged 12 to 17, and girls are creeping up on that number fast. We're not putting systems in place to watch over us because they're too embarrassing. There's a lot of different programs out there. The Trailhead Church site, that one's a great one to go to. There's accountability type of partners. All of that stuff is there. It's real. It's needed. Some of it costs money. But I'm going to tell you what I said last week. I would rather pay $12 a month than a lawyer fees for divorce. Get fixed, get healed, get over these porn addictions. Talk to your spouse about them. Talk openly and say, all right, here's some trigger things. I have friends that have talked to me, other men. Men have a hard time walking into a grocery store and not getting aroused just off the magazine covers on the rack. And that's real. That's true. It plagues your mind so that when you see those images, it takes you back to getting that pleasurable orgasms right now moment, and then you just start fiending off of that. You start getting, it's just like going into a steak restaurant and you smell the steak cooking, you go, it's Pavlov's theory, guys. It's right there. You start saliving, you're like, I got to do it, because you have created a system in your body that it needs this, and you've got to break it. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be some embarrassing moments. I've had friends that have wanted to commit suicide because their wife has caught them masturbating. And I just cringe the thought and go, oh God, please don't commit suicide. Go seek help. Go find what God has deemed perfect and right and start living that way, getting that influence in your life so that you can start getting out the wrong and working out and through all of those moments where it just starts coming up and those emotions come. So what's funny, and I say that word just because of lack of better words, but what's unique, let me say this, what's unique about sex and what our culture has said is they say you're more free when you have open sex. You're more free to have multiple sexual partners. You're more free. That's what the culture of the young single is being preached. Like, it's more enjoyable. Why be committed to just one sexual partner when you can have multiple ones? All these celebrities are saying, I want to be like George Clooney and never get married. I don't want to get married. You know what they're saying to me? Now, they're not saying to me, I don't want to get married because I don't want to have to really, I don't want my wife to lose my socks. Now, I'm going to say one about the girls. I don't want my husband to be all smelly when he gets into bed with them creepy toenails, right? But that's not what these celebrities are saying. They're not saying that. They're saying, because I want to be able to have sex with whoever I want. I don't want to be tied down. I want to live a life of freedom. I want to kind of go and see and do as I please. So you got all this going on. So it's funny that culture shares with us that you're more free when you have multiple sexual partners. Well, if that's the case, then our prostitutes in this world should be the freest of all people. And that's not true, is it? Everyone in this room can say that. No one in this room can leave out here and be like, prostitutes are pretty awesome. No one can say that. No one ever should be able to, that's wrong. Everyone knows this. You can't walk out of the sanctuary this morning and be like, oh yeah, prostitutes. No, you're not going to. So when we look at the statistics of prostitution, here we see that 66%, and I know this is a vast range of percentages, and sometimes these can be skewed. I understand math statistics, but 66% to 95% of prostitutes were sexually abused as children. 62% of prostitutes report having been raped. 75% of women in escort prostitution have attempted suicide. And the hospitals report that 15% of all completed suicides are female prostitutes. But yet they're the freest, because they can have sex all the time. That's what they do for a living. If you talk to porn stars that have been redeemed and fixed and healed, and they come out of that system, they'll tell you it's a warped culture. It's not real. It's not real. Yet that's what we're trying to look at as real. I've had people actually try to counsel other people they're not Christians. No one's Christians. We're just all hanging out. And I've heard people be like, man, I'm just not happy with the way my sex life's going. They go, man, you know what helped me is like my wife and I, we sit down and watch the porn. We watched a porn video to kind of get some pointers. What? You did what? That's jacked up. Yeah, we thought it was a good idea to watch porn. Guys, that's not a good idea. You're going to the enemy to find out what sex is all about. Do you know what happens is that sex, man, it blows my mind. And I want to say this correctly. When we express our sexuality outside the covenant of what God has created, when we express our sexuality outside of the covenant, we confuse our own emotions and elevate sexual expression above relationship. Do you understand that? So if you want real sex, it's not about your position. See, guys, some of you are like, if my wife would just stop doing it this one way and we could try different weird ways. Karma Sutra, let's buy a book. You're going to get your most sex out of your relationship with God. I know that doesn't seem right, and that even sounds creepy, me saying it from the stage, because it's kind of like, but like, what? Yes, you will get your best sex life when you get such an intimate relationship with God that when it comes together and you come together, it's going to be awesome. I don't believe it. Because I know I'm preaching better than you're shouting right now. The bottom line is, your relationship in that Holy Spirit moment where you're sitting with Christ and you're just loving on Him and God's loving on you, and then when you two come together and have sex, it will be explosive. It will be amazing. It will be what you want. Don't tell me that you think that a sexual position will fix your sex life. Because it's not going to. Some people think a sex position is going to fix it, and it's not going to. I hate time. I got to start wrapping up right now, and I still got at least another good 30 minutes to go. I'm kidding. But guys, we look at this in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 through 5, and it says this: now for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. That's good stuff. There's a writing here by D.S. Bailey. Paul writing this scripture, and this is where it takes time to research out this stuff, okay? So yeah, I help with that process of helping research this out, but you've got to go into it as well, okay? But what Paul just said, and I know I read it very quickly, I'm not doing it justice, but there is such a deep thought into this, it will blow your mind. So I'm going to read you what he says. D.S. Bailey says this: Paul's thought: displays a psychological insight into human sexuality which is altogether exceptional by first century human standards. The apostle denies that coitus is no more than an appropriate exercise of the genital organs. On the contrary, he insists that it is an act which engages and expresses the whole personality in such a way as to constitute a unique mode of self-disclosure and self-commitment. So again, as I've been saying here, he's taken out the sexual act and he's brought in the covenant side that a husband and wife are meant for each other. He's bringing it back to Adam and Eve from the very beginning, at that moment of expressing the intimacy beyond sexual realms. But he's saying this, when Adam popped up alive and is looking at this woman, it was no shame. It was beautiful, what was fully intended. There was no insecurities. Ladies, come on. There's no insecurities. Men, there's no advantage taken over a woman out of dominance. It was equally placed here. They were both equally the same, okay? She's not your sex slave. So don't just abuse your wife in the sense that she's there for me just to get off. She's there for me to love on her. She's there for me to show all senses of intimacy, emotional, thought. All of those different steps go into this compacted into one. So what Paul's talking, he didn't even bring in the fact of it, if sex feels good. He's not talking about that. He's not talking about husband and wife needs to do this. He's talking on the sense of the spiritual side of things. And I love it. He even breaks it down. Do not deprive each other except perhaps by mutual consent for a time so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. That confirms the sense that if there's something not working in your life, as far as the sexual side of things, consent to kind of break away from it, pray for a season, get in love. And I say a season, some of you are like months? No. Like hours? No. Maybe like a day or two, maybe a week. Come back. But then if you devote yourself to prayer for a week where you say, we're not going to have sex for a week, but we're going to pray, we're going to find worship with God, we're going to worship him so much that the next week we're going to have sex every day. Seriously, why not? Some of you, I remember my wife and I, we talked about it. It was like, should we try this thing? Or like, do you try sex every single day for a month? Because it's hard. It is. That's not an easy feat. Okay, that's not. But you know what? It's fun trying. It's great. It was good. It was like one of those moments you kind of like, wow, this is unique. And you know what's funny was years ago, all these churches were trying this out. I know Ed Young out in Texas, and then they put up billboards and all this kind of stuff, like sex challenges and things. And then what does the world do? Like all the morning shows get all hyped up on it. I can't believe these churches are, they're you know what? The churches should be setting the standard because sex is ours. God created sex. It belongs to us. So let us dictate what it is. The end.